Hey, everybody. This is Sherry Tutkus, and welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. And we often talk about things that people don't want to talk about. However, they are very important subjects that need to be discussed to decrease stigma for healing. But today we have good news. I'm excited to be here with the host and producer of the Canna Mom Show, Joyce Gerber. She's an amazing podcaster of the Canna Mom Show, and I was actually lucky to be on her show a couple of times. The part that I love about Joyce Gerber is an attorney, an advocate, and a writer. She brings her exceptional organizational skills, patience, and compassion into the emerging cannabis industry. She's the creator and host of the Canna Mom Show. And when she's not advocating for cannabis normalization, Joyce is active with many community and civic organizations in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where she lives with her husband, children, pets, and several students from the Berklee School of Music. In her spare time, she has managed a rock band. We're going to talk about that. Ran for local political office and likes to create beautiful quilts for families and friends. Joyce has degrees from Northeastern University, Tufts University, and Connecticut College. And when asked to describe his mom, her son, Josh, said, "She is a force to be reckoned with." So welcome, Joyce Gerber from the Canna Mom Show. I am so excited to have you on podcast today.
Thank you, Sherry. I'm so not used to being the guest. I'm like, oh, it's embarrassing talking about me. That's nice. Thank you.
What I love is the perception that your son has right now. I think it's just really cool that he sees you as a force to be reckoned with. So if he were here, what would he say? Like, what does that mean? Like, what would he say?
So I'll say, so when you talk about the rock band, so it was his rock band that I managed. Oh. So, yeah. I just keep going. I am very persistent. Like, if you need something done, you tell me. I don't always say yes, but if I say yes and I say I'm going to do it,
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
He's a force to be reckoned with. I love it. I think it's amazing. The other part that's really cool too is that we're going to talk about too is that you're a producer and a host of your own show called the Canna Mom Show. So it's cannabis. So I just find it interesting. You're an attorney. You know what I mean? So we talk about stigma and children. So you just didn't wake up one day, Joyce, and say, "Hey, I'm going to start the Canna Mom podcast."
I know.
There's like a backstory to it. And I think our viewers love to hear these types of stories as to what brought them into the cannabis space. So what brought you to the Canna Mom Show?
So again, when I'll talk about how I got here, I say cannabis is not my natural habitat. I am an attorney. I say I had a Cannabis Awakening in 2016. We're in Massachusetts. We're both in Massachusetts. The show is national, but my Cannabis Awakening happened to happen in Colorado, because where else would you have a Cannabis Awakening? It was 2016 was the same year that so Massachusetts, that was the year Massachusetts voted to have adult use. That was 2016.
Yep.
And then that summer, my husband and I just thought it would be fun to go to Denver. Just our kids were in camp. It was just the two of us. So we hired a woman named Goldie Soledar. She has a company out there called City Sessions Denver. And she picked, she picked us up in her SUV, and in the back of the car, she had all these she had her joints, and she had her packs, and she had gummies, and she brought us to a dispensary so we could see that it was just like going to CVS, just people sitting around getting their stuff. Nothing scary. But the thing that really shifted my mind was when she took me to the grow facility. And if you've never been to a grow facility, this is serious business. And my perception of cannabis, I had used it. It was a very secretive thing. I would go with a friend to a beach house as far away from our families as possible, and that's how we would consume it. But it wasn't part of my daily life. And I did have, preconceived notions. I thought it was dangerous for you. I mean, I really did. That's where I grew up. That was my era.
Yeah, I can identify with that. Well, here think about it, we never learned about it in nursing school, and when I first started using it, my mom blocked me on Facebook and wrote me out of her will.
Right.
So, truly, totally, I only understood the plant to be recreational. And until I was on the other side of the bed as a patient, that's when it opened up my eyes to the medicinal aspect.
And this is a health and wellness industry, which is what I talk about on the show. So 2016, I have a Cannabis Awakening. I realized cannabis isn't what I thought it was. I came home. My kids were teenagers. I told them I was wrong. They were very excited, but I had no plan on working in it. I was actually working at that time. My backstory is that, I'm one of those women who thought she could do everything. I went to law school and was pregnant my third year of law school. So, Josh and I took the bar together. And we passed. But then I've just had she's 22 years of being in and out of a professional life because my kids always trump my professional life. And that's just the truth of it,
Right.
Anyway, so I was working in 2016. I had a Cannabis Awakening. Massachusetts had legalized it. And then I lost my job. In 2017, a contract I was working on ended. And I spent 6 months trying to find a job. I have 3 degrees. I have a lot of work experience. I've ran for a political position. I can do a lot of stuff. You ask me to do it, I'll do it. And it was like I'd become invisible. Like I couldn't dumb down my skills because if I took my degrees off, it looked like I didn't work because then I'd have to pretend I wasn't an attorney. And then if I didn't put all my stuff on there, it looked like I didn't work.
You were overqualified.
I was overqualified. Yeah, it was very weird. And I started meeting all these other women who were just like me. I realized I'm like at the tip of the iceberg. Like I'm 55. 1972 is when they passed Title IX. So I grew up in that era. I was a little kid who played sports all the time. Girls were equal to boys. My mom was a feminist, sort of, and told us whatever my brothers did, I should do. And I believed it,
Right.
And then we had kids, and it's not really that way out there. So anyway, there's a lot of women just like me who have a lot of education. We did all the things we were supposed to do. We took the bar pregnant, our uterus and our brain worked at the same time. But the structures of our country really are not set up for mothers and caregivers. I mean, you all know that.
Right.
Anyway, so I'm just part of that generation. So I'm having a hard time getting a job. I've become invisible. I'm getting really depressed. And I'm meeting all these other women. Like I'm literally trying to make a profession out of not having a career. Like I'm advocating. I'm just like one of those people. I'm like, I got really deep. I'm like advocating and talking about it. I couldn't believe this was going on. And my husband was like, you got to go to therapy. Like you've got to figure out. And I'm kind of freaking out because my kids are about to be gone. Like, I'm not going to be that mom anymore. That I was that mom. You probably, I ran the PTA. I did all that stuff. Anyway, so I'm in talking about career stuff and what's happening to me. And I just mentioned cannabis because I know all the law firms are starting to hire lawyers, cannabis attorneys. And she's like, that's a good idea. So, you only need one person to tell you that's a good idea. And that was sort of how it started. So I thought I would go into law. So this is 2017. It's very new, and I start in the beginning. I, make connections with the Cannabis Commission and I meet other attorneys who are doing this work. And then I start going into your world, I'm going to Elevate Northeast and I go to, Women Grow and I hear the word endocannabinoid system. Who knew what that was?
Exactly.
And everything about this kind of shifted for me. So I spent about a year learning this. This is a lot to learn about.
Tons to learn. I mean, it took me 2 years to figure out how to make cannabis work for me so I could function below the threshold of feeling impaired.
Right.
It's like it's science, but it's also your endocannabinoid system. And that's the most important part is that people don't realize is that our endocannabinoid system is affected by every single thing that we're doing or not doing in our lives. So that's everything that we're eating, we're drinking, all of that. Mm-hmm. And so to truly figure out, cannabinoid profiles, how to make it work, right method, right dose, right profile, right terp, like all of that. It took time. And so then so what my goal is, I figure this, it took me 2 years to figure out how to make the plant work for me. If I can get someone comfortable and have this plant work for them in less than 2 years, then I know I've done a good job. And actually, the longest it's ever taken me to help someone get comfortable with the plant was 6 months. And it was because it was my mother.
Oh, the mom. My mom's been on my show. I've taken my mom to a dispensary, to a grow facility. I was at her house the other day. She hasn't touched any of the beautiful CBD products I brought over there. None of the tincture, nothing. Whatever. Parents. Anyway, so here we are. So here we are. We're talking about cannabis, and I didn't end up in law. I ended up in media, sort of almost by accident, and that's how I learned. That's how I learned the industry. So I was an executive producer for a show for a year, and I could see that this industry was not people sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, like just being stoned. That is not at all what this is at all. And that it touches everything. It's just like the regular world, but a little upside down.
Yeah, truly.
And that's how I learned about the industry. And then I started the show in 2019, really about it started talking with moms about how you talk to your kids. And it turned into what it is now, which is really talking to women in the industry and elevating their stories. I'm trying to focus this season too on more local stories. I did a lot of California and Colorado, just because they're just a more established industry last season.
I'll tell you, I've got quite a few Canna Moms for you, and they're all nurses.
Yeah.
And their stories, truly, it's like the nurses that are coming into the cannabis space.
It's the healing. When we talk about this and people say, I don't know if I believe in cannabis. And I'm like, it's not a belief. This is like we said, it's science. This is science and medicine and things that doctors and nurses weren't taught. And now you guys are catching up. It's very, the ones who are out there being brave like you, it's good for us. Well,
here's the reason why I'm out there being brave is just because I almost died. This plant saved my life.
Right.
Truly, and I truly feel that if doctors and nurses and clinicians that were taking care of me knew about the endocannabinoid system, I wouldn't have suffered as much as I did.
Which is what I talk about this now too, because I talk to so many medical people. This has to be the first line of defense. We have to stop talking about this because so many of the women's stories, almost to a T, anyone who's in this has healed themselves or healed a child or healed someone they love. That's why they're in it, and that's why they're so passionate. And it's always the last line of help. That's the last thing they go to. And it's so frustrating. So I'm just like, that's got to be the mantra. How do we make this the first line of defense and not the last?
Well, we changed the language around it. So one of the things I'm really trying to do is even change the language around high, the word high.
I don't like the word high or stoned. I don't like stoned either.
Yeah. So high, we're changing it to hope, inspiration, growth, and healing. So we're putting a little spiritual twist to it. I did some educating for the American Cannabis Nurses Association, and my topic was just a little bit different. And the reason why I chose the topic that I chose was because of what I've seen through COVID-19. And then I connected the dots and realized the first thing that cannabis brought me as a patient was hope. That's it. The first thing it brought me. Right. And then when it brings you hope, what does it do? It kind of opens up a dialogue in your mind and you become inspired. Hope, inspiration. And when you're inspired, you're in spirit. And when you're in spirit, you're looking at things from a different perspective. It almost as if it shifts from half glass empty to glass half full. So it's really perception, right? And so hope, inspiration, and growth. And so the growing in health is actually you doing something different, from that hope, from that inspiration. And then healing is subjective and personal. Healing isn't the absence of illness or disease. It's doing the best you can with what you have right here, right now. Yeah. So changing the dialogue around that, and also to changing how we work with patients. So if you think about when you go to a doctor or you see a clinician in the traditional system, they're focusing on symptoms, body parts, and disease processes. We're lucky if they get to a mental, emotional, psychological states. And rarely do we ever address a patient's spirit. So what if we did it backwards and we truly connected with our patient on a spiritual level first? I know it kind of sounds hokey, but spirituality, I truly feel, is the root of cannabis care. And I'm going to actually, there's the president that just left the American Cannabis Nurses Association. She was just exiting out, Dr. Carrie Clark, wrote in her chapter in the first cannabis nursing textbook all about this transpersonal nursing. You know, the reason, first of all, the future of healthcare is patient empowerment, and nursing, the basics of nursing is human caring, right? It's not about like the disease. It's about the whole person. And how can we work with people and patients in a different capacity where we can reach them in a way that makes sense to help them feel safe and secure and navigate cannabis in a way that makes sense to them.
So I'll say, so prior to this, I was an attorney. I was a divorce attorney. So when I came into this world, I almost make fun of it in some ways. I'm like, there's a lot of breathing and connecting, and I'm like, this is so healthy. The world I came from was so unhealthy, and that's considered normal.
I know.
And especially in family law. I mean, all family law is just, the attorney is there to fight your fight. And it's very non-spiritual, and love and goodness and hope are not words that are ever uttered.
Divorce, going through a divorce, God, my ex-husband, I love him to death. We are friends now, thank God. But I'm telling you, going through that, it was traumatic.
It's ugly, and we do it, and it's intentional. And you talk about, changing the narrative around nursing, changing the narrative around attorneys, especially in family law. The standard is supposed to be in the best interest of the children. Literally, that's what you learn in law school. And you don't, it's about money, and it's about, we're such a litigious country, and that attorneys are hired to fight. We're hired to be your fighters. That's really why you go to law school, is to learn how to fight. And that at the end of my practice, when I couldn't stand it anymore, I was trying to do collaborative law, which included a mental health care worker in the negotiations. And it was just a whole different dynamic and again, I was never into this whole idea, but energy, that, the energy in the room had shifted so much when you're not trying to fight to the death, and you're not trying to scheme around each other, and you understand that this is a process to get through. So at the other side, you can both care for your children.
Yes. It
was a little bit healthier, but people have to buy into it, and everyone's so angry, and divorce attorneys are not therapists at any level.
I'm going to tell you, it's the part that I had a really hard time with, and with my experiences with court, was the game. Okay, so the game between the attorneys at whose expense? The client's expense, the PTSD that's caused, the anxiety, the panic attacks. Oh, it's a game. We're playing the game. I go, this isn't a fun game. I don't want to play.
I didn't want to play it anymore either.
It's the posturing and the standing and the who's going to cave, and that's traumatic.
And it's unnecessary, and it's expensive, and it's detrimental in so many levels. So I think there's a better way. I think there's, and again, I kind of come back to this idea that a lot of these structures were created by men, and this is how things made sense to them for whatever reason. And I want cannabis to be built as an industry for caregivers, who are usually women. So we have to create it, because no one's going to do it for us. And I just talk about it, but I am meeting young women across the country who are literally doing it. Yeah. So, and I'm kind of sick of, I'm 55. So again, I was often the only woman in the room. If there was another woman in the room, we were competitors. We were not collaborating.
Right.
I am hoping that I am building a new generation of women, and I just want this to be different. And if we don't model it differently, it's never going to be different.
Well, there's enough for everyone. And so truly, it's like, basically, who do you serve? And this is what the plant taught me. The plant taught me this when I was sick, suffering, and dying. And when I got back to life, who am I serving? Am I serving spirit, or am I serving my ego? And when I serve spirit, I'm serving the plant. And when I'm serving the plant, I'm serving our people. And when I'm serving our people, I'm serving the planet. Right?
I don't know. It's just a nicer way to live. I got to say, it's hokey, and it's a little like,
who cares?
It's a little earthy, crunchy for me, but I am loving this. This is a whole world.
It's a whole different culture. It's a whole different way of thinking. It's a whole different mindset. It comes from abundance. It comes from love. Yeah. It comes from kindness. It comes from compassion. And it comes from the laws of the universe that truly exist. People don't think. And that's what this plan has taught me. This plan has actually taught me to open up my mouth about these things that I used to be afraid to talk about. because of thinking of what you might think about me. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But that's the whole, crushing the stigma and getting that crazy thing out of your head. And I don't know. It's been an interesting journey for me. And, and it isn't just about spirituality, obviously. It's also about like business. Today I was talking to a woman who was a scientist, a biologist and chemist. The testing issues are really important. These lab issues are really important. We need more women scientists in this, because I keep saying women are elevating the professionalism of this industry. They're coming in, women like me, women like you, who have had full careers or educations, and maybe we're in and out or things are happening, but we still have some good years left. We can enter this industry and we can create, we know stuff and we know people.
And we know people, absolutely. That I totally 100% agree with you. So quick question. So when we talk about the Canna Mom, and so how old are your children and how did you educate them on cannabis?
So my son is 22. My daughter is 19. In terms of educating them, so they were teenagers, I guess, when we had our Cannabis Awakening.
Yeah.
And it just allowed me to know what they were doing and not be so afraid. And, I tell the story. My son is 22. He was of that generation where everybody was medicating their kids. I don't know what's wrong with us. We were drinking wine. We were medicating our kids. But my son refused to take medication. Like literally, he would just never take anything. He ended up being hospitalized once because he kept spitting the penicillin back in my face. So, so he never actually took any ADHD medicine. Mm-hmm. But when I kind of opened up about this and we started talking about it more, I realized a lot of his friends were self-medicating. They were using cannabis in an interesting way that I wouldn't have known about, because I didn't understand how cannabis could be used that way as an alternative to ADHD medicine. And sometimes they would ask me, like, could they talk to, I didn't know enough then. I couldn't talk to their mom yet. I just didn't feel that comfortable, but I kind of could see what they were doing. And I wasn't, parents were so scared. They was like, get off the pot. Oh my God, you're smoking pot. So that was really different for me. And then that vape situation, when the vapes were bad, I wouldn't have known what a vape was, but I understood it because I was going to a lot of industry meetings and I knew about the vitamin E and I could talk to my kids about it. Like I just talked about it all the time. So they knew that I understood, and I found they were buying them. Like I didn't know that.
Right.
But again, it's like weird transparency. And I talk to like a lot of parents with little kids, because this isn't my issue. My kids are teenagers and now, this pandemic was made possible with cannabis. I think wouldn't you rather be home with a stoner than a drinker?
Hands down. Are you kidding? You don't, hands down. Like you're not even, you don't have to ask me twice for sure. Absolutely.
Anyway, so now they're older. So that kind of, we smoke together. That's how we relax together. We don't really drink together.
Yeah. But my kids, same. My older ones that are, old enough.
But when they're younger, and then I do talk to a lot of parents talking about their kids. Their kids know this is medication, just like a pill is a medication. They understand that. If you talk about cannabis in a grown-up way with your kids, if you're not hiding it or doing weird things, they're not going to want to do it. If you're hiding and being weird about it, that's when your kids are curious. Yeah. So I think I learned about transparency, I guess. That's really, it helps.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the funny things too is when I first started the Green Nurse, I created a patient handbook and educational material. And truly, teaching on the endocannabinoid system can be tricky because it's so abstract. Mm-hmm. So, I wanted to see if my kids could get it, because it's a very abstract concept, and I wanted to be able to really.
Oh, you have a great description, though.
Yeah, my little umbrella.
I tell that's what I use.
So anyway, I did this whole little presentation with them, and then afterwards I was done. I said, "So guys, what do you think about mom being a marijuana nurse?" Well, they kind of looked at me, they go, marijuana and cannabis is the same thing. Right. This was 5 years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. So what they learned in school is not what we're teaching. And so they were, and so then they were like, so that's what you're doing? I said, that's what I'm doing. And they were reminding me, Mom, here's your topical, Mom, and here's your thing. You need this, Mom. It's time.
But they can see it. They can your kids know, our kids see us. They know when we're crazy. And I do say this, when my kids were little, I could have come home and drunk a whole bottle of wine. No one would have cared.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have smoked a joint. It was like sort of out of my realm of possibility. But now I understand. I was very anxious. Like I was very stressed out. My husband was very stressed out. My kids were very stressed out. We were running around all the time, right? We were that generation. I could have smoked a joint and I could have sat on the floor with them and relaxed. Oh my God.
I know.
I feel bad about it. It makes me sad when I think about it. I'm like, I could have been better.
Can I tell you, and through my own experience too. So when I wasn't able to work, so, when I was sick and suffering and this came into my life and I started to figure out how to make it work as medicine, trust me, I'm a researcher. So of course, sometimes I did a little too much, but it wasn't a bad thing, but that allowed me to literally sit with my kids and to play a game and to participate and to watch a show with them and to even be in the kitchen with them, doing things that I wasn't able to do before, and it took me, it managed my pain. It took me out of the feeling guilty and shameful that I couldn't do and be the mother that I used to be. So it was like, it helped me to adapt to a new way of living my life in a way where I could be fully present with my kids and be happy.
I mean, I have to come back to that, the spirit or the light or whatever it is within us that makes us us,
Oh, totally.
I believe I'm there now. I'm all down now. And I go to these plant women in medicine with plants and psilocybin and whatever. And my husband's like, we're not stopping at cannabis? I'm like, oh no. The whole world.
Well, did you know that a lot of the cannabis nurses, including myself, were all founding members of the International Association of Psychedelic Nurses? Yes. So it's truly, this is, I truly look at this, the cannabis is the plant that's opening up the door to multiple other, healing modalities using multiple different plants.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and I'm all down. I'm having a full season of this, and who knows what season 3 could be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the other thing too, is that there are clinics that are popping up too across the country. The Green Nurses, we're going to be participating in one of the first ketamine clinics, doing guided sessions.
We have a lot of people coming back from war. We need a lot of this stuff. We need a lot of things to help people. And after these 4 years, we're going to need a lot of help. We need everything we can. Yeah.
Truly. So I see cannabis as being the best adaptogen to help us to adapt to stress, mind, body, and spirit. Absolutely. How about you? How is cannabis helping you to live your best life?
So like I said, this pandemic was made possible with cannabis. And so back in March, it seems so long ago. Do you remember March? Yeah.
I do remember March. I remember right before the lockdown, I was supposed to go to a party and someone said, there's a pandemic. I'm like, okay, no party.
Nope. Well, my son was out of the country. My son was in Spain and my daughter was in Arizona. And they basically were like refugees. They were like evacuated back home. And my husband works for Biogen, which was like ground zero. So that month of March, and I didn't know cannabis was going to be an essential item. All I remember doing is hoarding. I'm like, oh my God.
Exactly.
So kids.
You weren't the toilet paper hoarder. You were the cannabis hoarder.
and Healing Rose products. I had this thing. I needed Healing Rose products. I hoarded.
Oh, Healing Rose. Laura Bochner. Absolutely. Hello, Laura. We love Healing Rose.
I ordered I had all this stuff and the kids came home and they're like, Mom, there's no alcohol in the house. I'm like, yeah, but there is cannabis everywhere. We have salves. We have bombs. We have smoking it. We have tinctures. We are good.
We are stocked.
I don't know. It kept us calm. We really didn't drink that much. We spent a lot of time together. We relax on the porch now. I have a whole setup. I have bongs out there. I have all these beautiful bongs from my bud vase. Are you familiar with them?
Oh, yeah. No. Is it a glass company?
Oh, no. These are these beautiful, it's called My Bud Vase. It's a woman-owned company. I think she's in South Carolina. Okay. And her inspiration was that she was looking at the vases in her house and she realized it looked just like her bong. Ooh. So she makes all these they look like beautiful pieces of art that are actually bongs.
Okay, because I need a new one.
Oh, check them out. And my other favorite one is Elevate Jane has a really beautiful one that's glass.
Elevate Jane. Okay, putting her in the comments. Elevate Jane. Bud vase. Absolutely. Wow.
Anyway, so I have a whole setup on my back porch and last year, Rosh Hashanah. So right before the pandemic, the Jewish holidays, I'm Jewish. I did have a cannabis set up on my porch, just like we'd have a wine bar or a beer,
Yep.
So we have a cannabis bar, and so I'm just starting to normalize it, and I've been to a lot of events now, and they talk about, I want to do a cannabis event. I've actually never had an infused meal. The edible thing I haven't quite gotten into. I did one edible on the plane going to Vegas last year, which was a big mistake.
Why? What did you take?
I don't know, but so last year was Vegas. I went to, it was a year ago this week, was a women's conference in Vegas and MJ Biz.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And it was a late night flight, and I was kind of anxious. And I don't know, I had an edible gummy or cookie. I don't know. It kicked in the dark on the plane. It was not good.
Oh, no. Oh, jeez.
It didn't calm me down. So I think I need to use edibles like in a professional setting with people like explaining to me how to use it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm pretty good at teaching about edibles, because that's a lot of times we teach patients how to stack. So
yeah, I think I need to know more about that. Like I know about the CBD, like doing my 20 milligrams in the morning, and I listen to you, and I try to. So this is a lot. This part I don't understand so much, but the edible part and the meals I'm curious about, but I'm a little nervous to try it.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell, like, part that's really, really good way to introduce edibles is, even if you can just get dosed olive oil, MCT oil, honey, so per teaspoon how many milligrams is in there, and
it's the dosing. That's the
clearly, to be able to to know what your dose is. And then a lot of times too, what I found, because I need a lot of THC to manage my pain. So in order for me not to feel impaired, meaning, that I just want to sit around and, you know what I mean? Like, in order for me to feel productive, I need to have equal amounts of CBD to my THC. So it's different for everyone. So everyone's CBD to THC ratio is different. The minute I do more THC than CBD, I feel impaired.
Huh.
Okay. So CBD allows me to tolerate more THC to manage my symptoms, but I don't mind feeling impaired sometimes, because it's kind of fun. Yeah. So evening time, is when I'll start to up my THC, because also too, for me, once I start to up my THC a little bit, it can make me sleeply.
Yeah, which you want to do at night.
That's what I do. So I'll increase my
You're up early with inspiration in the morning. So
can I tell you that's it? And so that's the part that's so cool, is having the ability to craft your experience. So when people are even new to THC and edibles, I always recommend too to take CBD with it, to try to match the milligrams, and then you'll know. Because if you're doing a 1-to-1, you do a 1-to-1, one CBD part CBD, one part THC, and you feel really elevated, a little bit too elevated, then you're going to know you probably need more
CBD. Okay. Yeah.
So
all right. Well, I'm open maybe next year. I want to go to an event. Like I covered a wedding expo last year, and I'm like, how fun to go to like a cannabis event, but I haven't been to one yet.
Can I tell you, I just went to one. So the Cannabis Nurses Network, Heather Sobel is the CEO and founder. I love her dearly. She's one of my mentors. Cannabis Nurses Network is really, really a really great organization as well. And they had a wonderful world conference in September, which I got to present at. And then they also this past Saturday, they had a nurses appreciation party where it was all online. It was different rooms you could go into. She had a DJ. She gave out awards. It was kind of interesting. I'm going to brag a little bit. I won.
Good. No, go for it.
So I won Entrepreneur of the Year, which was really, it's just nice that recognizes nurses.
Yes.
And
or it's a little boost, that like thing that you like. Yeah,
it's a little boost, and it's tough. It can be a lonely industry to be in, to be a medical professional when you're standing up for something that you truly believe in, and really, you got to get that rough, tough skin, have some grit, have some resiliency, but also to be kind and compassionate. Because I remember too, at one point in time, I was on the other side of the bed, not judging it, but not truly understanding cannabis as medicine.
Yeah, cannabis medicine.
Yes. So how do you incorporate the plant into your life?
So like I said, I love the salves. Like the healing rose has changed my life. I have them everywhere. I do a lot of CBD face products. I've learned to smoke joints, which I never liked before. That's a new pandemic experience. I can't roll one, but I know how to fill a tube.
You can fill a cone. You can stuff.
I can fill a cone all by myself, and I like my bongs. I like the bongs are just beautiful. They're pretty to have.
Now, the little pipe or the water bubbler bong?
No, actually, they're bongs. They're like they're real, and you should elevate Jane. It's just those beautiful glass bong. I'm
gonna look.
Yeah,
you made a beautiful bong blanket.
Oh yes, and I quilt. Yeah, so I incorporate cannabis into every element of my life. Yeah, my quilting,
That's awesome. Okay, so really quickly too, because I want to get to this. So you've been doing podcasting for a couple of years now. Who? We'll just pick one. What guest besides me?
You've been on a couple of times too. You're my star guest.
Like most inspiring. He's been very inspiring to you. Not the most, but one of the most.
I'm gonna kind of categorize them, because like I said, I will have interviewed. I have guests lined up through June 21, so I've interviewed 100 women by June of 2021. That's a lot of women to meet who I wouldn't have met otherwise.
That's amazing.
I think the categories that I think are the bravest. There's a whole group of women who have used cannabis on themselves, like you, kind of used themselves as guinea pigs. But there's another group of women who have used it on their children. But and that's a lot different stigma, and they were doing it because they were desperate. Like I said, often these women, you were a little desperate. I mean, you got to a certain point and you tried it. And these moms, these real Canna moms, like the show is called The Canna Mom Show. When we were originally creating it, they wanted to call me the Canna Mom, which was absurd. So, it's the Canna Mom Show, like the Daily Show, like it's an interview show.
Right.
But there are real Canna moms out there, and the ones who are using it for their children. Like there's a woman up in Maine named Danny McQueen, and she has these CBD boxes that you can buy, so create your own CBD medicine basically. And that came about because her daughter needed this medicine, and she was creating tasty products for her daughter to get her CBD, and this became a business.
Wow.
And there's a whole across the country, these Canna mamas who are using this for their children with epilepsy. There's a woman in Boston who I haven't gotten on the show yet. But Boston's a pretty conservative place. I say we're Puritans. I never thought cannabis would be to pass here. Seemed odd, but we did it. And there's a whole community of people who are pretty conservative about this. And there was a woman, I met her at a business event, totally put together, talking about this businessy stuff. And someone said I should talk to her. And her child had epilepsy, a serious form of epilepsy. And she ended up being one of the first pediatric patients in Massachusetts to use cannabis. And she came from a military family, and that was a big thing to tell your military your father-in-law who's in the military that you're giving your grandchild cannabis.
Right.
And, so those kind of stories that these people are stepping up to care for their children, and that's the category. Those are I didn't find them inspiring.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know if I would have been brave enough. I didn't understand cannabis. I don't know what I would have done, but it's pretty brave to do as a mama, like to have that kind of passion and to go against what everyone's telling you.
Yeah, I can identify with that too, with my son too. Right. My son has a chronic, he was born with a rare genetic disorder, and it's true, like you will do anything for your kid, like literally even break the law.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's sad, but it's, I do give these moms a lot of credit, and we do everything that we can to help them and to make them.
And especially when you're hearing messages from, still people are making messages like heroin, cocaine, cannabis, all together in one statement, and that you could go to jail for this, and that.
Or you could have your child taken away.
And that everything you're feeling or experiencing is the literally opposite of what you're hearing from like sort of government officials or health, and you don't understand why. You don't understand that we're living in the anomaly in history. We're living in 100 years of weirdness. Like this product has been part of human history for 10,000 years, and we're the ones who we're not reinventing it. We're crushing the shame. We're making a wrong right. I think that's what it is. And these mamas these are very strong women who have gone and done this, and they're crushing the stigma. They're changing the narrative by themselves.
Totally changing it. Absolutely. And it's, and it was truly, I think language, and even my mother, it took her seeing a nun share her compelling story of using it for my mother to feel comfortable with it. And my mother, completely, she's 76 years old, she completely came out of the closet and said that she was wrong and that she was, had reefer madness, and she can't believe the way this plant made her feel. And she says, I feel good and I'm not high. And so I said, well, Mom, what does it mean to be high? She goes, I don't know. I feel good. I said, well, what does it mean to feel good? And she just said, the pains become background noise. I'm sleeping a little bit better. I'm a little bit less anxious. Things are a little bit funnier. And I'm definitely a lot nicer. That's what she says. I'm a lot nicer. So I said, but are you high? She goes, no, I feel good. I said, good, Mom. That's what's most important. You feel good.
That's what I think is so shameful. Is that I had this feeling, so I can't be alone. It was almost like if you felt good, there's something wrong with you. I had to be stressed if I wasn't working more. I don't know. It's like we are indoctrinated not to feel good. And if we feel good, there's something wrong with you.
Joyce, I went through this whole mental, emotional, spiritual bullshit when I first started using cannabis because I was feeling guilty that I was feeling good. How could I be so sick and feel good? So it's this whole shift. It really, it took therapy for me to truly feel comfortable feeling good using cannabis because I felt guilty. Oh, what are they going to think? Oh,
and now look at you now. Anyways, I just think, you're one of the first people I met in the industry. You were out there with a camera and a microphone talking to people, and stories change our lives. We are all ruled by stories. Religions are all stories. Everything is a story. We're changing the narrative by telling these women's stories over and over again, because these aren't anomalies. These are real stories of real women. And I think that's what's so powerful, because it's very hard to change people's minds. Look at our country now. We're literally living in two different realities because we keep repeating the same wrong story if you keep repeating the same thing over and over again, you can do good and you can do damage. So we're going to keep repeating these stories, telling these stories, explaining what's really going on with these women until people who can't see it can have a little light and understand that this is a different way of being, and that maybe you were wrong. Maybe everything we knew about cannabis was wrong.
Yes. And truly, what is a true miracle? A miracle is a change of perception.
Yeah.
Aha moment when it just makes sense. And that's what that story, my mother hearing the story about the nun, compelled her to, sit back and to try something different. And then my mom's story, my mom came out of the closet and did a podcast. Her story compelled someone else to get it a little bit different. So it's truly these sharing healing stories of healing with this plant, and getting the word out, the message out, for sure. So really,
Amen.
So here's a good one. My last question.
Okay.
So Nurse Mark wrote a book called Absolutely Fucking Amazing, Living the Life You Love. And so every morning on our show, we do the daily dose of AFA, and we pick a word or we pick a quote.
Okay.
So, and as you know, my tagline at the end is always, remember what it's all about. It's about living your best life. What would yours be if you had to have one?
Hold on. About my life. I was actually listening to someone the other day, and they were talking about how living life as a gift, it's a gift. Everything is a gift. And it just, that's a perspective change. Instead of,
there's thank you to life, right?
Sorry?
When someone gives you a gift, you say thank you. So when you see life as a gift, you're saying thank you. Thank you for this gift of life. Yeah. That's awesome.
So that's my new, I did a year of gratitude and trying to do the whole being reflective, living in silence. I'm an introvert sort of by nature, and it's really busy in my house. It's never quiet here. I live in a WeWork space. There's so many people here.
A lot of people. The people. We call it people-y, a little too people-y for me.
But no, this is great. This is fun. And I get to hang out here and talk to people virtually. So.
I know. So the Canna Mom Show, www.thecannamomshow.com. And where else can people find you, Joyce?
Apple, Stitcher, wherever you find your podcast. I am on Pod 617, the Boston Podcast Network. I'm hosted at MJ Bulls out in Colorado. Oh, I'm in Canada on a site called Hip Lives. Yes, I'm going international, people.
Oh, good. Congratulations. Joyce, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for elevating the plant and elevating women and getting those stories out. Truly an honor to have had you on the podcast today. Keep shining your light. We love it. I love you.
Love you.
And remember, everyone, what it's all about. It's about living your best life.
See you in the morning.